I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, "You need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night." And I look at him and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night." Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, No. He's like, "No, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her." So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, "We don't go into each other's rooms, do we?" And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only gets worse.
This is what they meant when they said, "Don't talk to strangers." In the early 1900s, a 10-year-old boy was playing in the woods when a tall man appeared and asked if he wanted to come back to his cabin for dinner. Totally caught off guard, the boy reluctantly agrees and begins walking. When they get to the cabin, the boy is relieved when he sees Paul, a family friend, sitting on the porch, so the boy happily goes inside. After they eat, the boy says thank you to the strange tall man, says bye to Paul, and then he leaves. He had only walked a few steps when he sees his family, along with Paul, running up the path towards him, frantically asking if he was okay. Confused, the boy says, "I'm just fine," and he looks at Paul and he's like, "Why didn't you tell them I was with you at the cabin?" And he points over his shoulder. Paul glances over the boy's shoulder and then narrows his eyes and says, "You were kidnapped by a cult 3 days ago. No one's seen you." Terrified, the boy turns around to look at the cabin he just came from, and it's gone. All he sees is a dark forest that stretches for miles.
Story time about how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Yes, my boyfriend actually did marry my mom. A little backstory on him. He and I had been dating for 6 months. We decided we wanted to move in together, but neither of us had a job. So we ended up moving in with my mother. A little backstory on my mom. Her and I never got along when I was growing up. I mean, it would get to the point where we would throw hands. Every single week she had a new boyfriend. Most of the time her boyfriends would come live with us and she would pay for everything. She even asked me to get a job so that I could help support her and her boyfriend. I started working at a restaurant. And yeah, I helped her pay for bills. I would even buy her boyfriend his beer. When I got accepted into college, I decided I would move out. After that, I barely spoke to my mom. Fast forward to when my boyfriend and I move in with her. She would wear lingerie around the house and constantly flirt with my boyfriend. I had to tell her on several occasions to cover up and just leave him alone. But here's the thing, it never bothered my boyfriend. In fact, he would flirt back. I thought he was just joking. Until a few months passed and he breaks up with me. Part 2 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, we moved into my mom's house and she was wearing lingerie all the time. And she would constantly flirt with my boyfriend. My boyfriend was having a really hard time finding a job, but luckily I found a job. So I started working as a personal assistant. The problem is that as a personal assistant, you have to be on call almost 24/7. So I was usually never home, and sometimes when I would get home, I'd have to go right back out. This allowed for my mom and my boyfriend to spend a lot of time together by themselves. I would come home and they would be watching movies on the couch together. My mom would always cook him dinner, and then I started finding out stuff. For example, I found out they went to the movies together and they didn't invite me. I only found out because my boyfriend used our joint bank account to pay for the tickets. Sometimes they would order food for themselves and not even offer me any, and they would have beach days. They were spending way too much time together. At first I thought this was good because it meant they got along, but the more my mom dressed provocatively, the more I realized she was trying to seduce him. Then my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out because him and my mom fell in love. Part 3 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So one day my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out. When I asked him why, he said that him and my mother fell in love. But since I was already suspecting something, it didn't really surprise me. But of course I was still devastated. That's when he asked me if I could move out that same night. Mind you, I don't have any money or even a place to go to. That's when I run over to my mom's room and guess what? She had locked herself inside. The coward didn't even want to face her own daughter. She told me that the best thing for everyone was for me to move out and that she knew I could get back up on my feet. So I grabbed some of my stuff and I went over to my best friend's house. My best friend invited me to live with her, thank God. A few weeks later, my mom invites me to her wedding with my boyfriend. Or ex, I should say. Last I heard, she's doing OnlyFans and my ex is living off of her. I have a better job, I'm thriving and have my own apartment.